Hello, good morning, afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are. My name is Aaron Crawford. I'm the pastor here at Monterey Baptist Church. And a couple days ago, I got thinking that I wanted to contribute something else to your weekly landscape, something else for you to do. I don't really watch the news a lot, but I started watching the news a couple days ago, and man, if you're watching the news a lot, that's gonna, I think, really, it's a big downer. And so I thought I should come up with some way to help you focus on things that are good and godly. And you've got a lot of access to Bible studies. I hope you're reading the Bible. I hope you're praying. But I thought I want to just do something else. I just want to add something, not take something away, but add something. And the first thing that I thought to do was a weekly video about church history. That's a very odd thing to think to do because church history is very boring. I mean, nobody likes church history. Nobody really ever studies church history or cares a lot about it or knows a lot about it. Where do friars come from? If you've watched Robin Hood, Friar Tuck, what's that guy? What's he doing? Why is he drinking so much? Where do nuns come from? What was the Crusades about? What happened in the Reformation? What happened after the Reformation? There was a thing called the Catholic Reformation that not a lot of people talk about. What is the history of the Pope? Where did that start, and how has that changed over the years? There's a lot going on. The holiness movement, where did that come from? There's just a lot of things going on. You can see that for 2,000 years, Jesus has been working in the world and has proven over and over again that he's faithful to his promise that upon this rock I'll build my church and the gates of hell will not overcome it. And so how have we seen that, and what have we seen Jesus doing in the church, and how has it grown, and how has it changed over the years? So I think it's valuable. It's not super, super interesting just by itself. If you're like me, history is not really interesting until you see it through the lens of how important it is. And once you see how important it is, then you can, I think, appreciate it more, and then you find more interest in it. You take more interest in it. Not that it becomes more interesting, but you sort of value it more. And so this is just going to be a really informal, I think, series of videos. This is just me in my office, so I sort of feel like I'm talking to myself, trusting that maybe some people will watch this video. But it's just going to be very informal. I wrote some notes down. I printed some stuff out that I want to read to you. And so it's just going to be fairly simple, and just going through some things that maybe you just didn't know about the history of the church. And by the church, I mean Christians, the sort of history of Christianity. And so to start today, I actually want to start by skipping over Acts and the letters that we have in the Bible. I think Sunday morning is the best time to address those things, and we do spend a lot of time addressing that, not necessarily from a historical a particularly historical perspective, but we do spend a lot of time talking about the things that are going on in the Bible. And so I want these videos to sort of be what comes after that, So I do want to start after Acts and the letters, but I think you could summarize what's happening in the New Testament historically as Jesus he's died, he's come back to life, he has commissioned the church to go and make disciples of all the nations, he ascended into heaven, and you've got the church left over. Pentecost comes, but really what you see in the New Testament from the church is the expansion of the church through missionaries. You see a level of confusion about what exactly to do between the Jewish Christians and the non-Jewish Christians they're all trying to be Christians together, and figuring out how that's going to work is a big theme in the New Testament. There is an organizing of the local church with deacons and elders, and what is that supposed to look like? You see that coming up in the New Testament. You also see persecution of Christians by Jews in particular. And so historically, those are things that happen really early on in the church. But for today, want to kind of skip over that. I reserve the right to come back to it and address it later if needed. But I do want to skip past that and go to something that happened. It's a very historical event that happened right after the letters and the things that we have in the Bible were originally penned, and that's in AD 70. There was a historical event where the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed, and how that happened and how that came up is a whole story in and of itself. For my purposes, I want to focus on how it contributed to the history of Christianity. And in AD 70, the temple was destroyed. It's actually the second temple. The original temple had been destroyed previously. This one was built, and you can read about that in Nehemiah. And then it was destroyed again in AD 70. It was significant for Christians because in the early years of the church, Christians were utilizing synagogues to meet. Jewish synagogues. Christians saw themselves as being, not an evolution of Judaism, but the next sort of logical spiritual step for Judaism is we still worship the same God. But we just have we see God in Jesus, and we worship Jesus as the Son of God, and Jews don't. And so Christians were meeting in synagogues. You see that in the Bible a few times where Christians are going to synagogues and they're preaching in synagogues and they're meeting in synagogues. And Jewish life had been centered around the temple, and it still was. So the Jews were still utilizing the temple a lot. Christians didn't really need the temple because they weren't making sacrifices or things like that. So for the most part, the temple was particularly Jewish. Well, when the temple was destroyed, the sort of Jewish religious culture needed to shift away from the temple because there wasn't a temple anymore. And so what happened was they shifted more significantly back into synagogues. And that's where the Christians had been meeting, and that just wasn't going to last very long. And so they actually implemented what's called the 18 benedictions, and it was something that needed to be read on a daily basis, just privately. If you were a part of the synagogue community, they told you to read these, to recite these benedictions out loud every day, personally, and then every week in the synagogue they would meet together and they would recite these 18 benedictions. Well, in the year 80, so this is 10 years after the temple was destroyed, there was a rabbi named Gamaliel II, and Gamaliel II added a couple lines to the 12th benediction that needed to be recited. I have it. He added these lines to make it say this, and it says, this is what the 12th benediction says: "For the apostates, let there be no hope, and may the kingdom of the arrogant be quickly uprooted in our days. May the Nazarim and the Minim instantly perish. May they be blotted from the book of the living and not be written with the righteous. Blessed are you, Lord, humbler of the arrogant." And that's a particular line that's added. And the Nazarim are Christians, people who that follow he who is from Nazareth. It's a clear shot at Christians. And so if in order to stay participating in the life of the community of the synagogue, you had to recite every week this thing that said basically that Christians are not going to be written in the book of life, and they will not be included with the righteous. And that that basically eliminated all the Christians from being able to participate in the synagogue. So Christianity that had been utilizing the synagogue, also meeting in homes, but had been utilizing the synagogue, needed to make a big shift out of synagogue life and into something else. Had to figure out what are we going to do now? What else are we going to do? Because that was a significant part of what the church was doing. And so Jews shifted into the synagogues, Christians shifted out, and part of Christians shifting out of the synagogue was significant because of the way that Rome looked at Christianity. Rome had always seen Christianity as something of a Jewish sect. It was Jewish by nature. They worshiped the Jewish God. Even in Holy Week, when you look at what happened on Good Friday, the Jews brought Jesus to the Roman governor, to Pilate, and said, "We need you to take care of this guy." And Pilate said twice, "He's your problem. He's Jewish. What do you want me to do with something that is your issue?" And so Rome had seen Christianity as being a form of Judaism. And when Jews essentially kicked Christians out of the temple, that changed. And so you see around the turn of the century, when the zeros turn into the 100, so around the year 100, you can see historically a shift where Rome officially had started persecuting Christians because they were no longer under the protection of being considered part of Judaism. Rome had a special relationship with the Jews and had protected, to a degree, Christianity, or had sort of preserved it as being a Jewish problem. But then after it was there was a clear separation where the Jews said, they're not part of what we're doing. They're not participating. We've kicked them out. You see more Roman persecution start. And it wasn't immediate, and it wasn't everywhere, but it did start. It did have in some places more than others. You could see it coming out. And there was around the year 110 or 111, there was a governor named Pliny. Historically, we call him Pliny the Younger. And Pliny, early in his time as governor, he wrote some letters to Trajan, who is the emperor of Rome. He wrote some letters basically saying, I'm young and I'm not exactly sure what I'm supposed to do about all of the things that are coming up. Can you advise me? And he's flattering to him. He's like, you know what to do. You're so good at this. You're so good at this. Tell me what I should do. And he wrote this letter. And if you want to Google it, you can look it up. If you type in Pliny, and then you type in 10.96 or 10.97, you will see these. You'll get a translation of these letters. But when Pliny wrote to Trajan, this is what Pliny said. I'm going to kind of summarize. I'm going to read some parts, but it's a whole thing. So he said, I've never participated in trials of Christians. I therefore don't know what offenses it is to practice or to punish or to investigate, and to what extent. So he's saying, I'm not sure what to do about, I'm not sure what it is about Christians that I should be punishing or looking for, and how much I should be punishing. And he says, here's what I've been doing. I interrogated these as to whether they were Christians. So when someone was brought to me as a Christian, I interrogated them. Those who confessed, I interrogated a second and a third time, threatening them with more punishment. And those who persisted, I ordered executed. So if somebody came, was declared to me to be Christian, I investigated, I interrogated them. If they persisted in being Christian, I killed them. I had them killed. And then he said that there was a little bit of a controversy that came up. He said the sum and substance of their fault or error seems to be that they were accustomed only to meet on a fixed day before dawn, to sing responsively a hymn to Christ as God, and to bind themselves by oath, not to some crime, not to commit fraud, theft, or adultery, or adultery, but not to falsify their trust, not to refuse to return trust when called upon to do so. In other words, these Christians are getting together every morning and they're singing a song to Jesus Christ as God, and they're making a commitment not to do bad things, but to do good things. And he says, when this is over, it was their custom to depart and then assemble again to partake of food, but ordinary innocent food. And so, I mean, they went out to lunch, right? So they got together and they sang songs and they renewed their oath to honor Jesus and to do good things, and then they went out to eat. And so he's saying, I'm not, it looks like this is their only fault, that they hang out and they sing a song and they make oaths to do good things, and then they go have lunch together. So and he says, so I need your counsel. That's why I've hastened to consult you. Not sure what to do. And here's what Trajan wrote back to Pliny. He said, you observed proper procedure, my dear Pliny. In sifting the cases of those who had been denounced to you as Christians, you did the right thing. It's not possible to lay down any general rule or a fixed standard. However, they are not to be sought out. If they are denounced to you and proved guilty, they're to be punished. Unless, he basically says, unless this person then denies his faith and proves it by worshiping our gods, then you're to give him a pardon. And he says, but don't listen to accusations that are brought to you anonymously, because that sets a bad precedent. So they're all kind of, you're seeing persecution. You're seeing official Roman persecution of Christians. He says, don't go looking for them, but if they get brought to you, yes, try to make them denounce their ways and worship our gods, and then give them a full pardon. If they refuse to, you're doing the right thing. Kill them if they refuse to change their ways. So that's persecution, right? And it's not everywhere, but you're seeing the emperor of Rome say, yeah, go ahead. And historically we can look and we can see how this sort of built up and how it ramped up and how persecution really had not got to a head yet. And now, we can look at this and we can say, that's pretty bad persecution, right? That's, if someone accuses me of being a Christian, I'm going to get pulled in by the governor, and he's going to, beat me up until I say, no, I'm not a Christian, and I prove it by worshiping their gods and offering a sacrifice to the Roman gods. And if I don't, he's going to kill me. That seems pretty extreme, but it gets a lot worse. So right now, at this point, we're in, we've covered basically 70 AD to about 110, 115 AD in this video. And it keeps going. And so we're going to see in the next, couple videos, we'll see what persecution was like. Also, what was the Christian response to persecution? And one of the things that comes up is when it's so easy to be killed as a Christian, all anyone needs to do is to accuse you of being a follower of Jesus. You're going to get pulled in and beat up, or killed, or you're going to have to deny your faith. Something like that's going to happen. The interesting thing to add into that, which I think we'll talk about in the next video, is that Christianity was wildly misunderstood, and people really did not understand what was going on with Christians. There were all sorts of misconceptions about what are they doing. They eat the body and they drink the blood of Jesus, and they call each other brothers and sisters, even if they're married. And when they meet together, sort of in secret, and they're hanging out together. And what is going on there? There's something very fishy about that. And so there was just this sort of bad reputation or rumor that Christians had And it was very easy for somebody to say, "Hey, I heard that Bob's a Christian," and it might be true, but Bob's over there thinking, what have I done to you? And it's just that there was this sort of story that was out there about what Christians were up to that was just wildly wrong. So you've got more of that stuff to look forward to. So I'm going to I'll do a few more of these. And if they're good for you, if you're gleaning good things from them, let me know. You can send me an email, or I think we might post these on Facebook or YouTube. So just leave a little comment and let me know that this was good for you. If you have church history questions, I probably will write those down and sort of address them as they come up as we go through the sort of timeline. But one thing for you just to think about, and I actually don't mean to preach or anything like that, but one thing that I want you to think about is with what we're going through in the world today, as you reflect on what Christians and what the church has been through in the past, and you look at the church utilizing meeting in homes and meeting in synagogues, and then all of a sudden the temple gets destroyed, and then the Christians get uprooted out of where they were and what they had been doing, and need to find a way to sort of reinvent themselves and figure out what are we going to do now. And they didn't have any support from the government. In fact, they were the government was encouraging this kind of persecution against the church. And so what would we do? You know what I mean? If we were, because we are in the middle of needing to sort of reinvent what we're doing. We're making, videos midweek. We're recording things and streaming things on Sunday. And we're doing all kinds of things that we've never had to do before. And I know that this is hard. Trust me, I know that it's hard. It's rough to get through. But man, the church has been through a lot more than this. Man, Jesus has always, over and over again, been faithful to his promise that hell will never rise up and overcome the church. And no matter what we go through, Jesus is our King. Heaven's our home. Hope is this birthright that we have as Christians. And we can look back historically and see, man, Jesus has done such good, faithful things in the church. So what do we have to be worried about? I know it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable for me. I miss my church. I miss hanging out with people. I miss shaking hands. I miss high fives. I miss hugs. I'm not a hugger, but I miss hugs. And I know that it's hard, but we've been through worse than this. So be looking forward to the way that Jesus will use this to do something really good and powerful in the church. And that's my encouragement to you, is we've got a lot to look forward to, and we're just adapting and changing as the need arises. And that's what you're seeing here. That's why that's why I'm doing a video. So we'll just keep there. Just stay there and be encouraged and be safe. And I hope this was enlightening for you. And let me know that it was, so that I know that I should keep making these videos. Okay. Ta-ta.